All right, Nuggets fans, welcome in to Pickaxe and Roll, brought to you by our good friends here at Mile High Sports and FanDuel. I'm your host, Ryan Blackburn at NBA Blackburn on Twitter, part of the Mile High Sports Podcast Network, and I am here. I am ready to discuss the Denver Nuggets this morning. They have been on a roll. Obviously, didn't podcast after last game on Saturday night against Indiana. But Denver did what they always do. They seem to be winning against sub 500 teams and doing so at a very high clip. Really impressive stuff from this group. And I've got some fun numbers, some fun, interesting stats to be able to share with some folks on Nikola Jokic, on Jonas Valanciunas, on everybody in between as the Denver Nuggets continue to establish their hold in the Western Conference. There are two teams right now that have really separated themselves. Houston, I think, is very close, but Denver and Oklahoma City have been the two teams, and it's looked really good. It's been a really strong start for everybody involved. So let's go over a few stats. Let's talk about some of the ways that the Nuggets have impressed, including with the big fella himself, Nikola Jokic. Let's start with this. Denver's overall offensive rating and defensive rating with Nikola Jokic on the floor this year have been tremendous. Plus 19.5 net rating on cleaning the glass so far this year. Just 635 possessions. It's still very early in the season. And again, Denver's competition that they have faced so far this year has been pretty shaky from the perspective of, okay, they faced Minnesota, they faced Golden State, they won both of those games, but they were without Anthony Edwards, they were without Steph Curry. So the overall levels and some of the numbers that I think the Nuggets have approached and been exceptional in, it's going to go down. There will be some times where it does go down, and that's okay. You just have to be understanding of when and how it does. But while they are in this current kind of setup, it is really important to give credit where credit is due. They've taken care of business only a couple of times where things have not necessarily shown out. In that opening night game versus Golden State, where, look, anything can happen on opening night. I'm the first one to tell you that. Like, it makes sense. It's understandable. But then the game against Portland is just one of those where, yeah, they're leading the entire way. You have one run kind of go against you. You have some bad calls that really hurt you down the stretch, and suddenly you're 7-2 as opposed to 9-0. So I'm not really worried about how Denver got to 7-2 as opposed to 9-0, but the actual numbers themselves are still really impressive, including that plus 19.5 number on cleaning the glass. Denver's in the 99th percentile when Joker is on the floor from an offensive perspective, 128.8. That's not a surprise. What is more of a surprise is that they're in the 85th percentile defensively, 109.3 defensive rating, points per possession allowed. Points per 100 possessions allowed, excuse me. The way that the Nuggets have been able to get that to work, their defense overall, because it's even been okay with Valanciunas on the floor instead of Jokic. The way that they've been able to make it happen, I like to look through the four factors. How are you doing both scoring and preventing shots? But there's some other things that kind of go into it. It's how many turnovers you're forcing, how many free throws you're allowing, how many offensive rebounds you're allowing as a defensive team, how many offensive rebounds you're getting as an offensive team. I was looking through it. Denver so far is second in the entire NBA in point differential behind only Oklahoma City, who's plus 13.8. Denver's plus 13.0. Denver is third defensively. That is truly tremendous. 109.7, very close to that number that Jokic had by himself, or not by himself, but when Jokic was on the floor. But the way that they have achieved that so far, third in effective field goal percentage allowed, third in offensive rebounding rate allowed, that's the third best that they have been in, 12th in free throw rate. So just average, maybe slightly above average there. The only place where they have struggled in that regard so far is the fact that they're not forcing that many turnovers. 26th, bottom five in turnover rate forced, 13.8 percent. OKC, by example, is third at 17.3. League average is 15.1. So Denver's below league average, and they're below it by a pretty significant margin. But that doesn't mean that they can't be a successful defense. Another team that I think is very good and has been very good without forcing turnovers historically is the Boston Celtics. They're very smart. They keep the ball in front of them. They don't allow a whole bunch of open shots. It's just about forcing the opposing team into uncomfortable looks and maybe daring some of their non-good shooters to be able to hit those shots. That's really important to me. And I do think that like Jokic has been a part of that, but there's been a lot of guys that have bought into that. Murray's defense, like so far this year, has been really good. Cam Johnson, I think, has elevated them over what Michael Porter Jr. would do. Bruce Brown has been very like handsy and physical. Peyton Watson's done a great job. Aaron Gordon's had a better defensive year, things like that. My guy, Jeff Morton, in the comments, one of the most notable things about Jokic's change this year has been undoubtedly reducing his post-ups. I think that has been huge in reducing his wear and tear. Well, let's look at that a little bit closer because I do agree. I think that the tracking of touches is very important year over year. Let's look into how many post touches Jokic has averaged so far this season. He's at 8.0 so far this year, 9.1 paint touches, 10.0 elbow touches. The previous season, he was like averaging one more post up per game at 8.8. He was still at 10.1 elbow touches and then 10.4 paint touches. So the overall number of touches, especially like front court touches, he was at 56.2 in 2024-25. And this year he is still at 55.7, but it's the manner in which he is touching the ball. And he's certainly not having to do as many hard things with the ball in his hands. Now, that'll change when Denver faces some tougher matchups, I think. That'll change when they have to get a little bit more involved and get him a little bit more involved because it has to, right? Like the way that they're running offense right now, it's really good against average to subpar defensive teams. They haven't faced that many top tier defensive teams. Golden State does count, but they are so undersized that like there's just no way that they could match up with a true center like that, or at least a true center like Jokic. And so there's definitely question marks as to what happens when they face the Cleveland Cavaliers with like Evan Mobley and Jared Allen, or if you're facing the Minnesota Timberwolves with Rudy Gobert and Julius Randle and Naz Reid and players like that. Like there'll be some matchups that I have my eye on for sure, but like Joker overall, I think has been really good on both ends of the floor, and they haven't had to overwork him, which of course is extremely valuable. Another stat that I want to break out, Jokic has been dominant so far this season, of course, and there are a number of measurements that you could get into in terms of like, okay, who are the actual like best like at what they do, what they're trying to accomplish. Box plus minus is one where I think it's just funny to see what the number looks like because Jokic has dominated box plus minus for so long. So far this season, Giannis actually dropped. He was like after this last game where he only had like 8 rebounds and 3 assists or something like that, though he's still at 35. Giannis has dropped, but the leaders in single season box plus minus so far will go in reverse order. 90-91 Jordan. Then you get the first MVP Jokic season in 21. Then you get Giannis in 2025-26. Then you get Michael Jordan again in 87-88. You get Jokic in the championship season. You get Jokic in the year right after that. You get LeBron in 2009. And then the top 3 are Jokic last year, then Jokic in 22 when he didn't have Murray or Porter, And then you get to Jokic this year. The previous single season record for box plus minus was plus 13.72. That was Jokic, again, without Murray or Porter. He had to put the team on his back. This year, he's at plus 18.5. Plus 18.5 is ridiculous. That is one of those numbers that you're never ever going to see again. Like it's going to come down at some point. He's not going to be able to play this way going forward and like with this level of efficiency. But some of the numbers that he's been able to put up have just been absolutely nuts. I mean, the overall stats are 25.2 points, leading the league at 13.0 rebounds and 11.9 assists. When Trae Young gets back healthy, he'll probably look to take back that title. But he's currently averaging a career high from field goal percentage in 64.4%. He's at 76.8% on two-pointers. He's not taking as many pull-up jumpers, like in terms of him having to kind of settle for a 15-footer or a 20-footer or going to the Sombor Shuffle at all. We haven't seen a Sombor Shuffle yet. And I think that there's a reason for that. It's been so easy that like he hasn't had to break out the hard stuff quite yet. And that's good. That is a good thing. That is not a bad thing. Another stat, he is at a 53.5% assist rate on Basketball Reference, which is over 20% higher than any other center in the NBA. Like one of one kind of player, one of one kind of style, and just so clearly in a league of his own right now from an efficiency standpoint that like he doesn't have to accumulate the volume as a scorer. The rest of the team has got him, but in part because he is setting the table as a playmaker better than he ever has. Like his playmaking, his passing, his vision, his execution have been so good. And that has turned him into the best possible player that he could be for this team this season. It's been really cool. Last one before we hit a break. Focusing on Jonas Valanciunas, I wrote an article this morning for milehighsports.com that you should all definitely check out. An appreciation of Jonas Valanciunas despite the low minutes he has played. 12.6 minutes per game for Jonas Valanciunas so far this year. Jokic has been close to like 34, 35, somewhere in that general range. And he's like even playing fewer minutes than he usually does. But the real thing with Valanciunas is that he has been extremely productive while he's been on the floor. What do you do with those 12.6 minutes per game? Like you've got Jokic out there, and then the opposing team finally gets a break. How do you, as a center, kind of take on some of that responsibility? And the answer has been he's scoring like crazy. Rankings among centers in points per 36 minutes, which adjusts for the minute slider. Joel Embiid at 30.3 points per game still leads, although his efficiency has, of course, been down and he hasn't played that much. Jokic is at 26.7 points per 36 minutes. Jalen Duren, surprising name, he and Victor Wembanyama are tied at 25.8 points per 36 minutes. They've been playing pretty well. And then Jonas Valanciunas, among the 52 or so centers that have played 100 minutes so far this season, is fifth. He's fifth in the entire like center group in points per 36 at 25.5 points per 36 minutes. That's a really impressive number. And it shows the usage that he's getting during that time. It shows how much the Nuggets trust him, that like the overall usage rate on Basketball Reference is third among centers. It is higher than Jokic, which I think is very notable. They've been playing through him. Jamal Murray's been playing through him a lot. When they don't stagger Jamal, it is Bruce Brown, it is Tim Hardaway. Like they often just dump the ball into the post, will let him get a bucket, or they will, like he gets offensive rebounds, or they will work the pick and roll and the pick and pop and things like that. It's been really cool to see. So Valanciunas doing exactly what you would want him to do. And I just think that he has stepped up enough that the Nuggets can be really happy with where they are at, just from the perspective of what he's doing. So it's only been 9 games, still plenty of time to go. But I do think that the Nuggets at this point are in the place where the first step of the season has really been solidified, where Jokic has done exactly what he's needed to do after a weird opener for sure. But Valanciunas has done what he's needed to do. The team is building lineups and rotations and groupings around those two guys, but they have been the focal points. Murray has been able to adapt his game to both players. Cam Johnson is still struggling to fit in, but he's figuring things out pretty slowly. But there's some progression there for sure. Aaron Gordon's had a really strong start. Tim Hardaway's had a really strong start. And after that, you just don't need that much. It's been bits and pieces from guys here and there. So been really impressed with the centers first and foremost. And that's where a lot of the margin, where the advantage comes in. So really good stuff from them, and excited to see where it goes from here. All right, let's take a break. When we come back, we're going to do Mondays 3 and 3. It's the 3 things that I saw last week that I was really impressed with or had some thoughts about, and then 3 things that I'm looking at for this week. And then we'll preview the upcoming 3-game road trip next here on Pickaxe and Roll. This podcast is brought to you by Delete Me. Delete Me makes it easy, quick, and safe to remove your personal data online at a time when surveillance and data breaches are common enough to make everyone feel vulnerable. Data brokers, they profit off of your data. It's a commodity. Anyone on the web can buy your private details. This can lead to identity theft, phishing attempts, and harassment. Have you ever been the victim of identity theft, harassment, doxing? If you haven't, you probably know someone who has. Delete Me can help. Take control of your data and keep your private life private by signing up for Delete Me. Now at a special discount for our listeners. Get 20% off your Delete Me plan when you go to deleteme.com/hit and use promo code HIT at checkout. The only way to get 20% off is to go to joindeleteme.com/HIT and enter code HIT at checkout. That's joindeleteme.com/HIT, code HIT. All right, we are back. Pickaxe and Roll, Ryan Blackburn here. Thank you so much for tuning into the show, folks. Hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. Would really, really appreciate it. There's a lot that's still going on and a lot that we still have yet to know about this upcoming season. Again, it's been only 10% of the way through. There's a lot of things that still have to change, a lot of things that still have to, you want to see Denver go through adversity at some points and how they respond to that. You want to see how other teams respond to adversity. Like if the Thunder never really face true adversity, then they're talented enough that they're going to get through it. But there's a team, whether it's Denver, whether it's Houston, whether it's somebody else, that could challenge them in a playoff situation if they never face adversity up until that point. I mean, we've seen what the Thunder can do from a championship perspective, so I'm not really that concerned about them. But there's other teams in the Eastern Conference that I'm still learning about, like the Cavs. I just saw it on FanDuel. According to FanDuel, the finals odds, as they have adjusted now, OKC is at plus 210. Cleveland is at plus 650. They have risen back above the Nuggets, who are at plus 700, although those odds have shortened, certainly, over the course of certainly the last month or so of the season. New York is at plus 1200. They've had a little bit of space that has crept in there. And then Houston is also at plus 1200. The Lakers are at plus 1500. They're lurking. Don't bet on the Lakers. That's not a good bet. But more of what I'm trying to express there is that the NBA is still shifting. There's still a lot of things that they're trying to figure out. Like who is going to represent the Eastern Conference is a chore trying to figure that out on a consistent basis. It should be Cleveland or New York. I would take the field at this point over Cleveland or New York, just because I'm not sure I've seen anything that I really trust, but Cleveland should be the team that it is. And so that's why the odds are the way that they are. but you just never know. You never know. So it'll be interesting to see regardless. Okay, let's do the Monday 3 and 3. 3 things that I saw last week, as well as 3 things that I am looking forward to this week to checking out. The first, if we go back to that Nuggets versus Kings game, um, Denver allowed 30 points in every single quarter. It was not a good defensive performance. It definitely felt like they were like in control the entire time. Like they knew that they could outscore the Kings if they needed to. The final quarter definitely allowed things to get a little bit condensed, but Denver allowed 30 points every single quarter. Going forward, they allowed in the Miami Heat game, they allowed one 30-point game, allowed one 30-point quarter. Against Golden State, they allowed 0 30-point quarters. And against Indiana, they allowed one 30-point quarter. So since then, they really did lock in from a defensive perspective. And that to me is a really good sign. You want to see Denver show out from a defensive perspective as often as you can. They gave a really good performance over the course of this week after that Kings game. And only one 30-point quarter allowed, or two 30-point quarters allowed during that time out of 12 is really, really impressive. It meant that there was never any crooked moments where the Nuggets were truly out of control. And the 30-point quarter that they allowed against Indiana, for example, like they still outscored them. Like Denver outscored Indiana 39-35 in that situation. So really impressive. Oh, and the 30-point quarter that they allowed versus Miami, they outscored them then too, 36-33. So it was never a 30-point quarter where they got outscored. That's incredible. That's an incredible stat to me. Because think about last year and how many times Denver kind of let a quarter go to the point where they were completely out of, like, everything was kind of spinning out of control at that point. Like, that to me is, I think, a really impressive sign for where the Nuggets are at this point. Next is the Jokic assist totals in each of those games. You had 14 versus the Kings. You had 16 versus Miami. You had 9 in 28 minutes versus Golden State, and you had 14 versus Indiana. These are crooked numbers. These are numbers that you do not expect to see all the time. And yet, Nikola Jokic has been fantastic when it comes to finding the open man. The Nuggets are always moving around him. He is making plays for other people. And some of these numbers are just bonkers, but that's the one that really stands out to me. Like, yeah, he had 8 turnovers in the Indiana game. He got sloppy at the beginning of that game. It was a little bit more difficult without Murray and Gordon, but he still found a way to set the table for everybody else. And just the way that he's been able to do it has been impressive. The plus minuses in each of those games are not crooked. Like you had plus 18 for Jokic versus Sacramento, plus 18 versus Miami, plus 16 versus Golden State, and plus 9 for Indiana. So by himself, like usually you'll see like Jokic's plus 25 or plus 30 in a game where Denver has a blowout. And then maybe the backup center is not as like consistent from there. One of the reasons the Sacramento game was so close, Jonas Valanciunas in his minutes was a minus 12. In Miami versus Miami, he was minus 8. It was actually, that was the one where it was zone defense that they were facing didn't necessarily match up with it well. But then against Golden State, Valanciunas was a plus 6. And then against Indiana, he was a plus 13. Really good minutes for the bench in those two games. So if Denver's going to get those kinds of performances from the bench in half of their games, that's a great sign. Like that's more than they got from the previous season. So really impressive how things are happening. And I just continue to think that the Nuggets, like from Jokic and Valanciunas, that's super, super encouraging. Finally, let's look at that Golden State game a little bit more extensively. Denver won this one by 25, and there were a variety of reasons why they did. Murray plus 25, Christian Brown plus 26, Cam Johnson plus 25. Those were the ones that stood out. There are a few lineups certainly this year that are very interesting, a few different combinations that the Nuggets have been able to play that have been very interesting. That was the first one where those guys were without Jokic and still found ways to be really successful, at least from my perspective. Um, that'll change at other points. Like the starting lineup so far is plus 30 in 140 minutes. It's not a super crazy lineup. Like they're still trying to adjust for some things. That's the sixth highest raw plus minus for any starting group. But if you dumb that down to 3-player lineups, like which 3-player lineups have really stood out, you actually have to go down to Jokic, Murray, and Christian Brown. It is like that trio that has really stood out. Other trios have outpaced them in the NBA so far, but like that trio, they're only shooting 34% from three, 33.9% from three when those guys are on the floor. There is some positive regression from three that's coming for this team. There's also some negative regression from three. That's one thing that I pointed out on Locked On last night. Nuggets are getting a little bit lucky from three. Opponents are shooting 31.7% from three against them so far this season. That is below expectation by a fair amount. There will be times where opposing teams, like there's only so much you can do when matching up with the opposition and assuming that they're going to miss open shots that you give them. Now, Denver's not giving up that many open shots as a team, but like that will change. But also, what will change is Christian Brown will stop shooting 17% from three. Cam Johnson, I think, is at like 22%, something like that. He'll get better throughout the year. So there's still so many ways that I think the Nuggets can improve. And I'm looking forward to seeing where it goes. All right, 3 things that I'm looking forward to for this upcoming week. Let's focus on it through the road trip specifically. Tuesday, tomorrow, they're traveling today to go to Sacramento, and they will face the Kings in another matchup against them. Russell Westbrook came off the bench in that matchup. Or against the Minnesota Timberwolves last night. They started Precious Achiuwa, who I did not know was on the Kings. Turns out he is. They needed a little bit of size to match up with Julius Randle, so I bet the same thing happens when they go against Aaron Gordon, especially after what we saw from the first Kings game on this last Monday night. So I'm going to be watching how does Denver match up with a slightly bigger Kings team. Are they able to still generate the assist inside? Maybe this kind of focuses them on being able to generate perimeter shots and getting more opportunities on the outside. Trying to get a little bit more consistency from the perimeter. That's something I'll be looking for. The other thing is like I want to see Cam Johnson get going from a scoring perspective. It's been so long since he's actually had like a crooked scoring total for the Nuggets so far. I think he had a game in preseason where he did pretty well, but he's only had a couple of games in double figures over the course of the last few. Game logs, he had a 15-point game against Phoenix, and he had a 10-point game against Sacramento and a 12-point game against Indiana. The rest of it has been in single figures. Would like to see him continue to get those shot attempts up and just find more opportunities for making threes. But yeah, like this last week, Cam Johnson went 2 of 15 from three. That's just bad. It's straight up bad. He will be better going forward, but it'd be nice to see him make some of those for sure. And then finally, I'm curious what kind of blended lineups the Nuggets will be able to get to. I'm looking forward to seeing, like, as Murray and Gordon are going to play, like they're going to play on Tuesday night, I would expect. Wednesday night, I'm curious. Like they're still a back-to-back against the Clippers, and then they will play against the Minnesota Timberwolves on Saturday night. So how are they going to match up with that? What is that going to look like? It's a completely fair question. Right now, the odds that the Nuggets get to 55 regular season wins on FanDuel is down to minus 162. Like the way that they have played, the way that they have gone consistently, um, they continue to show that if you can lock in enough in these situations, then you can win. Um, but the only way that they're going to be able to get to that more consistently and to actually win those games, like, you're not going to be able to do it by just playing three different lineups, which the lineups that I'm talking about, and they've been more creative than what I'm saying, is the starters, it's the bench plus Murray, and it's the Tim Hardaway plus the four starters look, where he comes in and then they play that for a couple minutes before transitioning into something different. So I want to see what happens when other guys rest, whether that's second night of a back-to-back against the Clippers. You're probably still going to get maybe a Murray or Gordon rest at that point, but I want to see what it looks like when other lineups play together, because that's the only way that you're going to be able to win so many games, and also be successful in a playoff environment. For like consideration, to get to 60 regular season wins, the Nuggets are still plus 230. I don't think that they'll get to 60, but I wouldn't write it off. I wouldn't write it off just yet. Okay. As I mentioned, they play Tuesday at Sacramento, then it's a back-to-back. Wednesday at the LA Clippers, and then Saturday they play against the Minnesota Timberwolves. I'm going to predict 2-1 in that particular rotation. I'm not necessarily thinking that they could lose all of those games, but they could also win all of them. I think that Sacramento's one where they'll probably overlook them on Tuesday night. Whether they want to or not, they will probably overlook them, just thinking, okay, well, we got to be ready for the back-to-back on Wednesday. We are facing Minnesota later in the week. We've already beaten Sacramento. Like, what could they possibly do? Well, they could score, and they could score pretty consistently. Sabonis, he was subpar in the first matchup. DeRozan did not make as many shots as you would expect. LaVine did not make as many shots as you would expect. LaVine was pretty good in this last game against the Timberwolves, I want to say, for the Kings. Yeah, he was 10 of 17 from the field, 6 of 9 from three, 0 free throws. Didn't matter, 26 points, but like they just could not stop anybody. The T-Wolves scored 144. So the Nuggets, if they want to, like, they will be capable of putting up a crooked total against this Kings team again, 130 points. I had predicted, like, if you guys remember, I think I predicted that they would score 140 points at some point during this homestand. They never got there for whatever reason. Like the offense just never reached that peak level, but the defense did. Like the defense was really solid in like as the kind of week went along. So can they bring either elite offense or elite defense to the table against Sacramento? If they can, then they'll probably win that game. So we'll find out. We'll see what they bring. But I think that's going to do it for this episode of Pickaxe and Roll. Really appreciate the love and support, folks. I'm not going to podcast tomorrow. I'm going to podcast instead on Wednesday and Thursday because Denver's got a Tuesday, Wednesday back-to-back. So I will react to each of those games, give my thoughts, and I'm sure there's plenty that we'll be able to get into. But thank you so much for tuning into the show. Really appreciate the support on the podcast as always. Hit that like button, hit that subscribe button on the way out. I will talk to you guys very soon.